Most people pour a glass of milk at the kitchen counter and have no idea what's actually inside the jug they just opened. You grab it on autopilot. Cold, white, familiar. It's been in your fridge since you were a kid. It's the one thing at the grocery store you never think twice about. And that's exactly the problem. Here's the thing. In the United States, the artificial growth hormone RBSD, sometimes called RBGH, is legal for dairy use under FDA policy. That same hormone is banned for dairy use in the European Union and in Canada. Sit with that. A substance considered too risky to allow in Canadian milk can legally move through the American supply chain, and under current U.S. labeling rules, no one is required to tell you it was used. The FDA's own stance on RBSD labeling is why so many cartons stay silent about it. Silence is the strategy. And here's what nobody tells you. The most shocking milk on your shelf isn't the cheapest generic jug in the door of the discount cooler. Some of the most heavily processed, most sugar-loaded, most quietly modified milk in the entire dairy aisle is dressed up as premium. It's got a barn on the label. It's got the word farm in the name. It costs more, not less. Price didn't protect you. The pretty carton didn't protect you. We're counting down 7 milk brands to be cautious about tonight, from mildly concerning to genuinely shocking, and then the 3 that actually pass, including one that might surprise you. And stay till the end, because I'll give you 4 label rules that let you read the truth about any carton of milk in about 5 seconds, standing right there in the aisle. No app, no research, no expert required. To be clear before we start, I'm not accusing any specific carton on your shelf of anything illegal. Everything I'm about to show you is legal. I'm showing you the system and how to read it. Let's get into it. At number 7, let's talk about the ultra-filtered premium milk in the tall bottle. The one that promises more protein, less sugar, lactose-free, all in a sleek plastic bottle that looks more like a sports drink than a dairy product. You reach for it because it feels like an upgrade. It feels like the smart, modern, health-conscious choice. It's owned by one of the largest beverage companies on the planet. And that scale is exactly what you're supposed to trust. Big company, big quality control, big reassurance. But here's how large-scale dairy sourcing really works. When a brand operates at that volume, the milk isn't coming from one small barn you could drive to. It's coming from a network of supplier farms, and the further the milk travels from the animal to the bottle, the harder it is for you, or sometimes even the company, to see every link in that chain. Opacity isn't an accident. At that scale, it's the default. And here's the documented part. In 2019, an undercover investigation at Fair Oaks Farms reported to be a supplier tied to this kind of ultra-filtered milk captured footage that documented animal welfare abuses. That footage became public record. The company publicly condemned what was shown and said it cut ties with that supplier. I want to be fair about that, they responded, and they distanced themselves. But sit with what it reveals. A brand you associate with clean, premium, high-protein purity was, at least at one point, relying on a supply chain opaque enough that this was happening inside it, and the front of the bottle told you none of it. The label was busy talking about grams of protein. It wasn't talking about the farm. Here's the kitchen consequence. You're paying a premium price, often 2 or 3 times the cost of plain milk, for a product marketed on trust and transparency. But the ultra-filtering process itself is heavy processing. This is milk taken apart and reassembled, filtered, concentrated, protein separated, lactose removed. It is not milk as it comes from the cow. When you pour it for your kid thinking you bought the cleanest option in the aisle, you actually bought one of the most engineered. Here's the label translation. Ultra-filtered sounds like purification, like you're getting milk with the bad parts strained out. What it actually describes is mechanical processing that fractionates the milk into components and rebuilds it to spec. Filtered is not the same as pure. Now you know. And number 6 proves that wholesome can be one of the most misleading words on the shelf. At number 6, let's talk about the chocolate milk. Specifically the mass-market flavored milk in the brown carton, the one with the friendly cartoon energy, sold in single-serve bottles at every checkout cooler and packed into school lunches across the country. You trust it because it's marketed to children. Something aimed at kids sold in schools has to be basically fine, right? It's just milk with a little flavor. That's the whole pitch. Wholesome, fun, a good way to get calcium into a picky kid. Here's what nobody tells you. Flavored chocolate milks like these can carry roughly twice the sugar of plain white milk. We're talking about numbers that often land around 20 or more grams of added sugar per serving, right there on the label if you actually flip it over and read it. And here's the anchor that makes that land. The American Heart Association suggests children get no more than about 25 grams of added sugar in an entire day. So a single glass of this wholesome chocolate milk can by itself walk a child right up to their whole day's recommended added sugar limit. Before breakfast, before a single cookie, before anything else they'll eat all day. Now layer on a second fact. Added sugar in beverages is treated differently by mainstream nutrition science than sugar you chew, because liquid sugar is easy to overconsume and doesn't fill you up the way food does. Public health researchers have spent years specifically flagging sugar-sweetened beverages as a driver of excess added sugar intake in American kids. This isn't a fringe claim. It's about as mainstream as nutrition guidance gets. Here's the kitchen consequence. You pack this in a lunchbox 5 days a week thinking you're doing the responsible thing, giving your child dairy and calcium. But across a school week, that's 5 glasses, and the added sugar quietly stacks up to something closer to dessert served daily than a health drink. The calcium is real. The sugar is also real. The carton only wants you to think about the calcium. Here's the label translation. On a flavored milk, don't read the line that just says sugars. Milk naturally contains some sugar as lactose, so that top number blends the natural and the added together and softens the picture. Find the line underneath that says added sugars. That's the one they'd rather you skim past. That's the number that tells you whether you bought a nutrition product or a treat. Believe the math, not the mascot. It gets worse, because number 5 wears the most trusted word in the entire dairy aisle. At number 5, let's talk about the premium organic milk in the carton with the green fields and the sunrise. The word organic is right there in big friendly letters, and that word does real work on your brain. You reach for it because organic feels like the end of the conversation. It feels like you already did the research, like you paid extra specifically so you wouldn't have to squint at the fine print. Certified, wholesome, case closed. And to be fair, the organic certification here is real, and it means something: no RBSD, certain feed and pasture standards. I'm not going to take that away from it, but here's what the front of that carton won't explain to you. Much of this line is ultra-pasteurized. UHT. That's a heat process where the milk is flashed to a much higher temperature than standard pasteurization. It's completely legal. It's completely safe. And it's the reason that carton can sit on a shelf or in your fridge for weeks with a best-by date that seems almost too good to be true. Here's the documented trade-off. Some researchers and a lot of chefs report that ultra-pasteurization can alter the flavor of milk and can affect certain heat-sensitive nutrients compared with standard, gently pasteurized milk. It cooks the milk harder. That's the honest way to describe it. You are trading some of the fresh, delicate qualities of the milk for shelf stability. That's not a scandal, but it's a trade, and you never agreed to it, because the front label sold you on the field and the sunrise, not on the fact that this milk was heated to within an inch of its character. Here's a second thing worth knowing. That extended shelf life is a clue about the supply chain, not just the fridge. Milk built to last weeks is milk built to travel long distances and sit in inventory. The gentlest, freshest milk tends to be the milk that has to move fast because it won't last. Longevity on the date stamp often means distance and time between the cow and your glass. Here's the kitchen consequence. Ever notice that some organic milk tastes faintly cooked, a little flat, slightly different from farm-fresh milk, and you couldn't put your finger on why? That's the UHT process on your tongue. And if you've ever tried to make fresh cheese or a delicate custard and it behaved strangely, ultra-pasteurized milk is a known reason home recipes sometimes fail. Here's the label translation. Look for the word pasteurized versus ultra-pasteurized, or UHT. A best-by date that's a month or more out is your tell. That's almost always UHT. Organic tells you how the cow was raised. It doesn't tell you how hard the milk was cooked. Now you know. And number 4 is where I prove that saving money and losing information are the same transaction. At number 4, let's talk about the store brand. The private label conventional milk in the plain jug at the giant discount chain and the warehouse club. You buy it because it's cheap and because, honestly, milk is milk, right? It's a commodity. The generic gallon and the name brand gallon came off similar trucks. Why pay more for the same white liquid? That's the logic, and on price alone, it's not crazy. Here's what nobody tells you. On a lot of conventional private label milk, there is no RBSD or no RBGH statement anywhere on the label. And here's why that silence matters. Remember the top of this video, RBSD, the artificial growth hormone, is legal in the US under FDA policy, and it's banned for dairy use in the EU and in Canada. When a carton carries no statement about it one way or the other, that artificial growth hormone may have been used somewhere in that supply chain, and US labeling rules do not require anyone to disclose it to you. Sit with that for a second. The absence of a claim is not the same as the absence of the practice. On the cheapest commodity milk, you're often not being told this is hormone-free. You're simply not being told anything at all, and you're left to assume the label isn't lying to you. It's just quietly declining to answer the question. Here's a second documented fact about how commodity milk works. Private label milk is bought on price, at massive scale, and pooled from many farms into large tanks before bottling. That means the milk in one jug can be blended from numerous sources, which is exactly why a specific hormone use answer becomes almost impossible to trace once it's in the commodity pool. Cheap milk isn't cheap by magic. It's cheap because it's the most commoditized, most blended, most cost-pressured product in the case, and cost pressure lands on the farm. Here's the kitchen consequence. You save maybe $1 a gallon. In exchange, you accept the least transparent product in the aisle for the thing your family drinks every single day, in the largest volume, often poured for the youngest people in your house. That's a lot of unanswered question for $1. Here's the label translation. On conventional milk, if you do not see the words no RBSD or RBGH free or a USDA organic seal, treat the hormone question as unanswered, not as safe by default. Blank space is not a clean bill of health. It's just blank space. Believe the label's silence, not your assumption. And number 3 shows you what happens when milk becomes nothing but a price. At number 3, let's talk about the legacy commodity brands. The heritage names that have been around for 100 years. The ones with the old-fashioned script logo and the nostalgic packaging that looks like it belongs in your grandmother's refrigerator. That nostalgia is the entire pitch. You trust it because your parents drank it and their parents drank it. It feels like heritage. It feels like a brand too old and too established to cut corners. Here's how that business really works, and it's public record. These long-running commodity brands were tied to a major dairy company that filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2019. Let that sink in. One of the biggest, oldest, most recognizable names in American milk, bankrupt. Not because people stopped drinking milk, but because commodity milk became a brutal race to the bottom on price, where the product is treated as interchangeable, and the only thing that matters is being a few cents cheaper than the tank next to it. Here's why that matters for what's in your glass. When a company is under that kind of financial pressure, sourcing and quality control are under cost pressure too. Everything gets squeezed. And here's a second piece of the picture. That same era of commodity dairy has been marked by consolidation and by well-documented strain on the small and mid-size farms that supply it. Farmers reporting they were paid less for their milk than it cost to produce. When the people milking the cows are losing money on every gallon, that pressure doesn't disappear. It flows through the entire chain, right down to the jug you're holding. Here's the kitchen consequence. When you buy purely on the nostalgic name, you're not buying quality assurance. You're buying a logo that survived from an era when the brand meant a specific dairy, attached now to a commodity system where that connection has largely dissolved. The script on the carton is a memory. What's behind it is a spreadsheet. Here's the label translation. A heritage brand name tells you about marketing longevity. It tells you nothing about current sourcing, current ownership, or current quality control. Old name, modern commodity tank. Don't let the font from 1935 vouch for the milk from this week. Now you know. And number 2 is the one that's marketed as the solution to a real problem, which is exactly what makes it slippery. At number 2, let's talk about the lactose-free milk. The one for sensitive stomachs, the one your family reaches for because someone can't handle regular dairy. And I want to be genuinely fair here, more than anywhere else on this list, because this product helps real people. If you're lactose intolerant, this milk lets you enjoy dairy without discomfort, and that is a real, meaningful benefit. I'm not here to take that away from anyone who needs it, but here's what the label frames very carefully. It's sold to you as simply milk. Same white jug, same milk on the front, just gentler. Here's what's actually happening. This is milk with the enzyme lactase added to it, and that enzyme pre-breaks the lactose sugar before the milk ever reaches your glass. That's the whole trick. It's a processing step. A mild one, a helpful one, but a processing step nonetheless. Which makes this, technically, a modified version of plain milk, rather than milk exactly as it comes from the cow. Here's the part that surprises people. Because the lactose has been broken down into simpler sugars, lactose-free milk often tastes noticeably sweeter than regular milk, even though no sugar was added. The enzyme splits lactose into glucose and galactose, and those register as sweeter on your tongue. So people sometimes switch the whole family to it thinking it's a purer, gentler product, and end up drinking something that tastes sweeter without understanding why. Here's the second thing. Nobody who isn't lactose intolerant needs this modification. If your stomach handles regular milk fine, adding the lactase step gains you nothing. You've simply opted into a more processed version of milk for no benefit. It's a targeted medical-style solution being quietly marketed as a lifestyle upgrade for everyone. Here's the kitchen consequence. Families buy this as the default, healthy milk for the whole household when only one person actually needs it, paying more for a modification the rest of them will never benefit from. It's a solution to a specific problem being sold as a general-purpose better milk. Here's the label translation. Lactose-free is accurate, but the word milk on the front does a lot of quiet work to make you feel like nothing was done to it. Something was done to it. An enzyme was added to change its chemistry. It's a modified milk, and that's fine if you need it, and unnecessary processing if you don't. Read it as what it is. And number one is the most engineered product on this entire list, hiding behind the friendliest face in the dairy case. At number one, let's talk about the sweetened flavored milk with the long ingredient list. The strawberry milk, the specialty flavored milk, the one in the cheerful bottle that looks the most fun and the most harmless of anything we've discussed. This is number one not because it's the most dangerous. Remember, everything here is legal, but because it is the widest gap between what the label makes you feel and what the ingredient line actually says. This is the masterclass in the whole game. You trust it because it's colorful and playful and it tastes great and it's marketed as a treat that's still, somehow, wholesome milk. The front of the bottle radiates innocence. Here's what's on the back. Many of these flavored milks list carrageenan and natural flavors right there in the ingredients. Both are FDA permitted. I'm not telling you they're illegal because they're not. I'm telling you what those words actually mean because that's where the whole thing turns. Start with natural flavors. This is one of the biggest labeling loopholes in the entire grocery store. It sounds like the food equivalent of a fresh strawberry. In reality, natural flavors is a legal umbrella term that can cover a whole bundle of flavor compounds and processing aids. Combined in a proprietary blend, the company does not have to itemize for you. So on the ingredient line, the one place you go for the truth, you're handed two vague words standing in for a list you're not allowed to see. The ingredient line tells you far less than it appears to. That's not an accident. That's the design. Now carrageenan. It's a thickener and stabilizer derived from seaweed, used to give flavored milk that rich, smooth mouthfeel. FDA permitted, widely used. But it exists purely to improve texture. It feeds you nothing. It's there to make a processed product feel more luxurious than it is. Add the sugar low we talked about back at number 6, and you've got a product that is engineered on every axis. Engineered flavor, engineered texture, engineered sweetness, engineered packaging. Here's the kitchen consequence. You hand this to a child believing it's basically flavored milk plus a little strawberry. What you actually handed them is a sweetened, stabilized, flavor-engineered beverage whose real ingredient list is partly hidden behind two legal words. And you did it feeling like the responsible parent because the front of the bottle worked exactly as designed. Here's the label translation, the most important one on the list. Natural flavors does not mean simple and it does not mean transparent. It means a bundle we're legally allowed not to fully disclose. When you see it alongside a stabilizer like carrageenan and a big added sugar number, you're not looking at milk with a flavor. You're looking at a formulated product wearing milk's reputation. Now you know. And now, the safe ones. Now the safe ones. Because I don't want you to walk away from this thinking every carton is a trap and there's nothing left to trust. There is. And what makes these picks work isn't a brand name. It's a set of qualities you can carry into any store forever. The first one that passes is the farmer-owned cooperative organic milk. Here's why it passes, and it's not a slogan. It's USDA certified organic, which by law means no RBST, no RBGH. That hormone question we kept running into on the conventional cartons is answered here, in writing, by an actual standard. On top of that, USDA Organic requires genuine pasture access for the cows under the National Organic Program. That's a documented, audited standard, not a marketing phrase someone dreamed up in a design meeting. The word pasture here has a legal definition behind it. But here's the part that makes this one special, and it's the structure. It's a farmer-owned cooperative. That means the people who actually milk the cows have ownership in the brand. Compare that to number 3, where farmers were getting crushed by commodity pricing under a bankrupt corporation. In a co-op, the incentives point the other way, toward the farm surviving, toward quality, toward the name meaning something because the farmer's own livelihoods are tied to it. When you buy this, you can trace the story. Certified standard, real pasture, farmers with skin in the game. That's transparency you can verify, not vibes you're asked to trust. The second pick is the certified 100% grass-fed organic milk. This is the pleasant surprise because it goes a full step beyond the first one. Here's why it passes. It's certified organic, so again, the hormone question is answered and pasture is required. But then it adds a third-party grass-fed certification on top. That means the cows are never grain-finished. Their diet is grass, verified by an independent standard, not just claimed on the front of the box. Why does that matter to you standing in the aisle? Because grass-fed is one of the most abused buzzwords in the entire grocery store. Plenty of products slap it on the front with no verification behind it at all. What makes this pick real is the stack. USDA Organic, plus an independent third-party grass-fed certification layered over it. 2 separate audited standards, not one marketing word. That layering is the tell. When a brand is willing to submit to a second, stricter, independent certification, it's because the milk can actually pass it. The ones with something to hide never invite the second auditor in. The third pick might be the most old-fashioned thing in this entire video, and that's exactly why it works. It's the certified organic, non-homogenized cream-top milk sold in returnable glass bottles. Here's why it passes, and it's almost the opposite of everything we warned about. It's certified organic, so the hormone question is answered. It's non-homogenized, meaning the cream rises to the top the way milk naturally does, because it hasn't been mechanically processed to force the fat to stay blended. You literally shake the bottle. That's not a defect. That's milk behaving like milk. And it comes from a certified organic dairy that names itself and sells in reusable glass bottles. Think about what glass tells you. Glass is heavy and expensive to ship, and it gets returned and reused, which only makes economic sense for a dairy operating close to home, moving milk fast, turning inventory quickly. That's the opposite of the weeks-long UHT shelf life we saw at number 5. This is the minimally processed, fast turnover, transparent, name the farm alternative to the anonymous plastic jug commodity milk we started with. It costs more, but you can see, taste, and trace exactly what you're paying for. Now, the 4 rules that turn all of this into a 5-second test in the aisle. Rule 1. Look on the label for an explicit USDA organic seal or a clear no RBST or RBGH-free statement. This is your single fastest filter. Remember number 4 on conventional milk. Silence about the hormone is not the same as safety. If neither of those statements appears anywhere on a conventional carton, don't assume it's clean. Assume the hormone question is simply unanswered and decide with your eyes open. 5 seconds. Seal or statement or unanswered. Rule 2. Check whether it says pasteurized or ultra-pasteurized/UHT and glance at the best by date. This is the number 5 test. A best by date that's a month or more out almost always means UHT, which trades some flavor and some heat-sensitive nutrients for shelf life. If you want the freshest, gentlest milk, you want standard pasteurized with a nearer date. A too good expiration date is a clue, not a bonus. Read the date like a decoder. Rule 3. On any chocolate or flavored milk, read the added sugars line specifically, not the top sugars line that blends in the natural lactose. This is the number 6 test, and it's the one that protects your kids. Remember, the American Heart Association suggests around 25 grams of added sugar as a daily ceiling for children. Anything near 20 or more grams of added sugar in a single serving is closer to a dessert than a daily drink. Flip it over, find added sugars, and let that one number decide. Rule 4. Prefer grass-fed or pasture-raised backed by a third-party certification over any buzzword sitting alone on the front, and when you can, favor cooperatives or single-source dairies that actually name their farms. This is what tied together all three safe picks: the co-op, the third-party grass-fed stack, the named glass bottle dairy. A verified standard beats a pretty adjective every time. If the claim has an independent auditor behind it, it's a fact. If it's just a word on the front, it's decoration. Certification over adjective. That's the whole rule. So here's where we land. Look back at everything we just walked through. Nobody had to lie to you. Not once. The ultra-filtered bottle really is high in protein. The organic carton really is certified organic. The lactose-free jug really is milk. The store brand really isn't required to mention the hormone. Every single word on every one of those labels was legal, and every single word was engineered for the impression it leaves behind after you've stopped reading. The trust, the wholesomeness, the farm that may not exist the way you pictured it. That's the machine. It's built to earn your trust without ever quite earning it, to answer a question by carefully not answering it, to let a font, a field, a sunrise, a mascot, and two words like natural flavors do the work that honesty would have done if honesty had been the goal. And that machine works flawlessly on one condition. It only works on someone who can't read the label. As of right now, that person is not you. So I'm going to ask you for one thing and only one thing. The next time you see someone you love reach for the familiar carton on autopilot, the way you used to 10 minutes ago, share this with them. Don't lecture them. Just hand them the decoder. That's the only thing I'll ever ask. Read the label, not the logo, and I'll see you at the next one.